So welcome to folks that are here, and I know people will be kind of coming in. This is our last ICGC colloquium for this academic year. We're going to take a break June, July, August, and then get back into it in September. And we'll be sending out an update for folks on our constant contact list to kind of update everybody on where we are and kind of where we're headed in the fall. It's all very exciting. So, but welcome. It is a pleasure for me today to be able to introduce Dr. Vicky Basra and Dr. Natalie Indelicato. How's that? Yeah, okay. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Vicky Basra, who has been a kind of, I feel like, friend and colleague for a number of years now through an organization called the Dolores Barr Weaver Policy Center. We have had Jean Baker Miller Training Institute and ICGC have had a kind of a standing collaboration with both the work they're doing, but Maureen and I, and who else, Vicky, have been down to speak and lecture. Karen Critic came down. You know, we've done a lot of work with them, and they're just doing amazing work. What other ICGC folks have come in?
I think it's mainly the three of you that have kind of informed our work in multiple ways.
But just you're going to hear some today about the work and the ways that they're using RCT in the work. But let me tell you a little bit about a newly minted Dr. Vicky Basra, who just received her doctorate in social work, your doctorate from the University of Tennessee. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Vicky is a passionate advocate for gender equality and girls' rights. She's a nationally recognized trainer, thought leader, trusted consultant, and architect of change. Probably we could say 100 more things, Vicky. She contributes to a number of research studies analyzing the impact of trauma on girls and young women, and is a frequent contributor to news media on issues related to commercial sexual exploitation, diversity, and leadership, and the impact of trauma on girls and young women. She's a recognized and accomplished nonprofit executive with more than 20 years of experience in the vast array of nonprofit leadership roles. Currently, she is both the president and the CEO of the Dolores Barr Weaver Policy Center. Her mission is to ensure that all see the girl, and that's one of their catchphrases. Really, you know, I think that so resonates with kind of the work that we do at ICGC, you know, being seen, being heard. Especially those being pushed into the justice system. She's also responsible for the growth and widespread support of the Policy Center's unique continuity of care model, which she may speak to. She has extensive experience meeting the needs of communities through the development of innovative programs and community engagement models. She previously served as the Director of Family Preservation at Family Support Services of Northeast Florida, and as the Director of Project SAFE at Vanderbilt University. So welcome, Vicky. I mean, what a privilege, what an honor to have you here and to be sharing your work, your wisdom with all of us and the community. Vicky is going to be presenting kind of the bulk of the work today. And then we have Dr. Natalie Indelicato, who is going to reflect on Vicky's words and help with her own observations. And she's been actually crucial in bringing actually the work of RCT and training the people at the Policy Center in this work. So she's been very critical to kind of bringing this all to fruition. Dr. Indelicato is an associate professor in the clinical mental health counseling program at Jacksonville University. She completed her PhD in counseling education from the University of Florida. She is a licensed mental health counselor and qualified supervisor in the state of Florida. Her professional counseling and research interests include college student mental health and the mental health of women and girls. Dr. Indelicato enjoys integrating her clinical experience in the classroom through active, relationally focused, experiential, and community-based learning. Her interest in a community engaged approach is tied to the belief that community engagement is a critical component of being an effective counselor, client advocate, and social change agent. So we would really look forward to hearing your reflections. And I will turn the program over to you, Vicky.
Well, thank you, Amy, for that amazing introduction. I always laugh that our communications person wrote that, so it makes me sound so much more amazing than I actually feel. But I'm grateful to be here and to have this opportunity to share our work. And I know Amy and Maureen probably don't remember this, but the first time I actually met the both of them was when I worked at Vanderbilt University. We had the opportunity to bring them to campus and provide a week-long training. And I was a new mom at the time, and my now 16-year-old son was about 6 weeks old, and I brought him to the training. And as a new mom, you're still trying to figure out what life looks like and how you navigate the world with a new baby. And I was one of those lucky parents that was able to bring my child to work. We had a baby at work policy, and so he was coming to work with me. And so I had brought him to the training, and Amy and Maureen were just so gracious in having him in the space. And, when he would babies make those noises and you can't control it. And I would leave the room, and I remember Amy coming up to me at one point and saying, Vicky, you don't have to leave the room every time he makes a noise. Like, you can stay in the room and be present and stay present. And I think it was just so reflective to me of not only were they teaching a model that aligned with how I wanted to exist in the world, they were also modeling that model in the presence of how we wanted to move forward on our campus. And so when I moved to the Dolores Barr Weaver Policy Center almost 8 years ago, I had the opportunity to build programs. They had just opened, and I was invited to be the vice president of programming. And we were starting to build kind of the concept of, we had received a grant, and they had an idea of what they wanted, but they didn't have a concept of how they wanted to build these models. And I knew that our RCT had to be a core concept, a core building block of how these models were created, and had to be a tool in each of our direct service providers' pockets as they were doing the work, right? So no matter what theoretical perspective or what, model the therapist was using, underlying all of it had to be relational cultural theory, because that's the only way we were going to engage girls and their families. And so I'm going to start by sharing a quick PowerPoint, because I'm visual. And so I think it helps to see some of the words on the screen as I'm talking. And then we'll obviously have some time for questions at the end. But if you have any comments, feel free to just unmute yourself and jump in as I'm talking. Can everybody see my shared screen? Thumbs up or, all right, perfect. So as I said, I'm with the Dolores Barr Weaver Policy Center. Our tagline is See the Girl, which we are very, very proud of. It came from one of the girls we were working with. So our CEO at the time, Dr. Lawanda Rivora, was traveling to Tallahassee. A core part of our work is doing legislative work and changing policies. And she was traveling to Tallahassee during the legislative session and decided to stop at one of the locked facilities in Florida and asked to meet with some of the girls. She was told there was one girl that was refusing to meet with anybody and refusing to meet in the circle. And so she asked to meet with this young person. The guards said that nobody was allowed to meet with this girl by themselves. There had to be a guard at all times with her.
When you're done with what you're doing, can you get me a couple of those packets of gummies in the cabinet?
Because that she was unsafe to be around by herself. Lawanda, being Lawanda, was like, no, I'm fine meeting by herself. A guard can be outside of the door, but I do not need a guard to be in the room with me. So Lawanda met with this young person, and Lawanda said, I'm going to Tallahassee. I'm going to meet with some of the decision makers. What do you want them to know? And this young girl said, I want the adults in my life and the decision makers to see me for who I am, not to see me for my behaviors, not to see me for the decisions that I've made, but to see me for who I am and the possibilities that are available to me. And from there, we developed the tagline, See the Girl. Because girls are so much more than what they are in that moment. Because we recognize that trauma results in behaviors, but we have to pause and ask more questions to really understand why those behaviors may be present and understand the full lived experiences that have brought them to that moment. Our mission is that we engage with communities, organizations, individuals. We have a 4-prong approach to our work, which includes research, community organizing, advocacy, and training, and then model programs. And we believe housing all of those components under one roof is what allows us to really move forward and make changes at a larger perspective. So when we can understand what's happening at the individual level through our model programs and our direct services, when we can understand what's happening and girls tell us directly what's happening and we're doing research at that level, and we're also doing research at the community level, then we can better understand what are the changes that need to happen at the practice level, policy level, and the legislative level. And that's our larger vision. We don't want to just impact at the individual level and individual advocacy. We want to do advocacy at a larger level, changing policies, changing laws. And so our professional and personal identities are very much tied to our partnerships and our mutuality with girls and the young women and those that identify as female who are being pushed into the juvenile justice system. We value their lived experiences. We see them as the experts of their lives. We understand that their cultural identities impact their lived experiences. And we understand that, their language also needs to be heard and understood from the lens of how they're existing and how they're navigating the world. And all of those need to be seen and understood and play a core part in how we advocate for them. So what makes the Policy Center different than other organizations? Because while there's not a lot of organizations that have all of these components under one roof, there's a lot of organizations that are doing policy work. There's a lot of organizations doing direct services. But I think even with us doing these pieces, what adds to the work we're doing is that, number one, the girls and young women and those that identify as female that we serve have a voice in all of the work we do. They help design the work we do, the programs we have. They have a voice in how we implement our work, and they even have a voice in what our leadership looks like. We also believe that it is important for us to have partnerships at the local, state, and national levels, and with local, state, and national organizations. And I'll give examples of this as I continue through my presentation. We engage and mobilize with local citizens. So we have a leadership council made up of local citizens that inform our work. We share our research with them. They're not in the work, so they're not people that are doing this work on a day-to-day basis. They are leaders in the community. And so when they hear the information we're sharing, they're looking at it from a very different lens and are able to provide feedback to us from a different lens. And that our research informs our practice. So everything we do is based on research, and our research is informed by the voices of girls. Also, we continuously elevate the dialogue and mobilize the conversations that are happening in the services we're providing girls, as well as what we're collecting at a community level through data sets. And so we take what girls are saying in girls' quotes and bring together what we're learning through the data into our reports. And all of our research reports are actually available on our website. So if you, our website will be posted at the end, but I also think it's at the bottom of our website. The clearinghouse of cutting edge accurate information. All of our assessments, any document we use is girl specific and aligned and based on the research we've done around what is informed by girls. Before we put out any assessment, before we start using an assessment, we first sit with girls and say, how would you feel if someone sat with you and did this assessment? What would it feel like? Are these questions you would want to answer? How would these questions impact you? Because we feel like that so many times we ask questions that are important to us, but we never ask girls and young women and those that identify as female, whether these questions are the questions they want to be asked. And sometimes when you ask them that question, they come back and they're like, actually, if you asked me this question, then this is what I would tell you. And you get information that you never realized that you would have gotten. And then we have practical training and capacity building. So our trainings are based off of the information we're continuously learning from girls. And so what do? We do research, advocacy, model programming, and training, our 4 key components. Why girls? Everybody always asks us, why are you focused on girls? Boys need support too. Well, what we recently learned and what we continue to learn is that 1 in 3 girls continues to share that she does not feel safe in school. 1 in 4 girls reported that she doesn't feel like she has a parent to share personal information with when she's not feeling safe. 1 in 3 girls are sexually abused before the age of 18. And this is self-reported. So this is data that was pulled from self-reports, data reports that were done, research that was done in schools, middle and high school, based off of research done in high schools. 40% of the girls in Duval County reported, and that's the county we're in, that life is not worth it. And 1 in 3 girls in the juvenile justice system have current or prior involvement in the child welfare system. So this is why we focus on girls. So how do we respond? When we know this is happening to the girls in our community, how do we respond? We have built a comprehensive girl-centered practice model. It is something that is in the Policy Center and based out of the Policy Center, and it is grounded in the relational cultural theory. That is the theoretical perspective that our girl-centered practice is based on. And what I'm really excited about is we're working with Georgetown University to create a certificate program based on the Girl-Centered Practice Institute that will hopefully be coming out for the first time in September. And we're working with Amy, which we're really excited about, to be a part of that. And from this work, from this girl-centered practice model and work, and the work around RCT, we also have built a system reform and community transformation model as well. Because you take those same perspectives and the same understanding, and you then embed it in community work and community change. And so those are the 2 kind of key factors that we continuously work on. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about what does RCT look like in our internal component, so with staff and how we build our internal model. What does it look like with our work with girls, young women, and those that identify as female? And then what does it look like in our community model? So in our internal infrastructure, our way of navigating the issues we face or the concerns we face is through reflective practice. We utilize reflective practice on an ongoing basis anytime we face a bump on the road or we face a barrier. Reflective practice always asks the question, what do we know? What do we need to know? What do we do with what we know? And then how do we move forward from here, right? And if you then look at what is RCT, and you bring those components in around like that every relationship should have a sense of zest or energy, that there should be an increased sense of worth, there should be clarity, productivity, and a desire for more connection. So when we do our reflective practice, at the end, we do a check-in to see if we've moved in the direction of gaining more connection and more relationship within our staff and those that are around the table, so that when we've faced like a barrier, we're not creating more disconnect in our organization, but we're creating more connection. We have built core staff values together. And core components of RCT are built into our staff values and are part of our core conversations. We have one of the things that came up as a part of last year and everything that has happened, the racial, I don't even know the word to use anymore with everything we face, because I feel like we're still in the middle of it. I'm still having to have key conversations with my kids and with staff. Rulings are still being overturned about police officers. So I feel like we're still in the middle of our racial unrest. But as a result of it, because we were having key conversations within our organization, we were doing check-ins with staff on a regular basis of how were they feeling, especially our Black and Brown staff. We decided that we needed to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, and that it needed to be led by an external person who could hold leadership accountable. Because me leading it, I don't have to hold myself accountable. I don't have to make any changes. By having someone else lead it or be a part of the committee, there was a different sense of accountability. And so for us, that was another way of ensuring that we were aligned with the cultural components. Our role as advocates, internally and externally. And so we challenge our staff to continuously build the internal infrastructure that we hope to engage with on the external point. So if we don't have how we treat ourselves, treat each other internally is going to be reflective of how we treat those we serve. So if we don't have that internal model, if we don't have internal policies, then it's going to be reflected in how we engage with other organizations. It's going to be reflective of how we treat our clients and those we serve. And so there's constantly conversations internally pushing us to move forward. A great example of this was 2 years ago, one of our staff brought up issues around using our pronouns and why we weren't using our pronouns, which brought in a larger conversation of, yes, it's very easy then for me to step in and say, okay, we're all going to start using pronouns, and on our Zoom links, everybody, I want you to put your pronouns. When we start having meetings, we're going to start, saying I'm Vicky and I'm she, her, hers, But if we don't understand why we made that decision, then it doesn't matter if I make that mandate and I put that into our policy. Our staff have to understand why we've made that decision and have to, in some ways, professionally align with that. And so we have to do our internal work so that when we're having those external conversations, staff can clearly articulate why we moved in the direction to start listing our pronouns. And so we actually brought in an expert to do that work with us, to educate us, give us the language, and to address any microaggressions that might exist within our organization so that we weren't just putting our pronouns there, but we were understanding why we were moving in that direction. Because we recognized, number one, some of our clients' parents might not like that we're using our pronouns now, because some of our clients' parents that's something they're fearful of. Their children are struggling with it, and they're choosing not to use the pronouns that their children want their parents to use. And when they see a staff person, with pronouns they, that creates barriers. And so we as an organization had to understand how we were going to navigate that those would be possible barriers. And so we felt like, let's do our internal work. Let's address our microaggressions internally first. And then we would take the step as an organization to say, we are going to use the pronoun. We are going to start using our pronouns and include them, and know that our internal infrastructure policies align with now the stand we're taking out externally and on the outside. We take time to connect in staff meeting and quarterly meetings, and then our policies and practices really focus on aligning with creating connection, creating spaces that are not pushing staff to have to choose between, for example, our baby at work policy, not having to choose between family and professional direction. But it really is about how do we create a world that builds more connection, that allows people to know, if we have this environment in our workplace, then this is what the work needs to look like externally. And I always say, if I would not bring my children to receive services from this organization, then we should close our doors. So our girl-centered practice, which is what all of our work is based on, uses a strengths-based approach. And this is kind of our theoretical perspective as well as our core principles. We see girls as the experts of their lives. And so therefore, we really believe that they are there to teach us just as much as we're there to teach them. And so mutuality is a core part of our values. And so these are the core values that all staff work from. And you sit where the girls sit and you see what they see from the lens that, they're seeing the world from. And that their lived experiences need to be honored in every aspect of the work that we do. Their knowledge, their culture, ethnicity, language, their gender expression, all of those components are a core part of how we do our work with girls. And then the 6 key elements that support the 3 core goals, or the 3 core perspectives, is our theory is ensuring that the programs are guided by gender relevant theories. Connection is a core element, focusing on the importance of girls' connection with family, friends, schools, and other people. Many times, especially when working with victims of human trafficking, immediately people are like, well, stop seeing the trafficker. You need to stop seeing the trafficker, without really understanding what is the relationship there. There is a relationship there, and therefore, until we understand what the relationship is there, we cannot just tell this young person to stop the relationship with the trafficker. You have to understand it. You have to build an alternative to that relationship. And then you'll see that this young person has no pull towards that trafficker. But understanding connection is a key part of this. It's why children that are in the foster care system continue running back to their parents. Every time they run away, the majority of children in foster care are running to find their parents. Community. What community is this child living in, playing in, learning in? That has to be part of something we're understanding and a part of how we're doing our work. Intersectionality has to be a part of our work. reflection, reflective practice, listening without judging, and then activism. We believe activism is a core part of our work. It is something we can use as part of our healing, both for ourselves and for the young people we work with. Our model programs, which are our direct service programs that we provide, are Girl Matters, it's elementary. It's our programs in elementary schools, where we work with local universities who are trained through our Girl Center Practice Institute and provide direct services in schools. The interns provide one-on-one services to the girls. It's an alternative to suspension. So when the Policy Center first was created, we had over 850 girls being suspended just in our county alone in elementary school. So that's kindergarten to the 5th grade. We knew we had to do something. And so we built this program as an alternative to suspension. And so in the schools that we're in, instead of suspending the girls, administrators and teachers can refer them to our program. We have classrooms, the girls can go to the classrooms, and their interns then work on the key issues that they're addressing. And I always talk about, my kids have the privilege of going to school with just books in their backpack. The girls that we have the privilege of working with in these programs are carrying so much more to school every day. Many of them are wondering when and where their next meal is coming from. They're wondering if when they go home, if that's the same home they're going to be sleeping in, that night. And so when you're carrying that much more in your backpack, you're definitely not worried about what's happening in the classroom and paying attention to the teacher. And so how do we make sure we're addressing those additional needs so they can show up in the classroom and focus on what's happening in the classroom? Girl Matters in the middle ended up being built as a result of its elementary. So our girls in elementary school were being sent to alternative middle schools when their behaviors were being considered out of bounds. And so we found that girls were being sent to alternative middle schools and decided that elementary school girls were being sent to alternative middle schools and decided that we needed to build a middle school program to address those needs. And also on top of it, as our elementary school girls continued to grow and move on to middle school, they were like, well, who's going to help me in middle school? Who's going to be there in middle school? And our research showed that there was an increased disconnect between middle and high school. So that was the highest point that girls were likely to drop out of school. And so we felt like we needed some program to continue to engage girls there. And we also know disconnect from school for girls is also a pipeline to prison for girls. Girl Matters in the Community is our work in the community, where we're working directly with those that are being pushed into the juvenile justice system. We have groups in the detention center. We have advocates in the court system. We work with girls that are actually being sent out to locked facilities, because we know they're returning to the community eventually. So we want to continue working with them and helping them when they return to the community. We provide telemental health services while they're in those facilities. We're advocating for alternatives to lockup. So instead of girls being locked up, we want to try to find services in the community to address what's happening, because a lot of times we know that over 80% of the girls that end up in the juvenile justice system have been exposed to some form of trauma. And usually that's the result of why we're seeing the behaviors we're seeing. And so that's our service. It follows the girl from anywhere that she is, diversion, detention, probation, wherever she is on that spectrum of the justice system, our team will work with her. And it's a team of a care manager, a therapist, and for those that are victims of human trafficking, we have survivor mentors on the team. Our survivor mentors are individuals that have had the same lived experiences as victims of human trafficking. And so they themselves have been victims of human trafficking and now are survivor mentors on the team and are equal partners. And we really see their lived experience as being their expertise. and they work directly with girls. All of our staff are available 24/7 to the girls and their families, and really address any need. We also work locally with our state attorney, with our sheriff's department. So if they do a sting and any girls are picked up during the sting, our team will go out and work with those girls and support those girls. So it's a full kind of response. And they've really grown from girls and families' feedback about what's needed in the community and where the gaps are in the community. And so we're continuously listening and paying attention to where are the gaps, what are the gaps in the systems, what are the gaps in the programs, and shifting our responses, shifting our models. So what this model looked like 5 years ago is not what it looks like today. It continues to grow based on the needs. They're dynamic based on what girls are telling us. And girls were telling us, I don't want to talk to professionals. I want to talk to someone who gets it, who knows what I'm going through. And that's when we extended the program to include survivor mentors. Our community model. So when we go into a community to really do this work at a community level, we start by looking at what is the status of girls in that community? What is happening for girls in that community? We talk to girls by doing listening sessions with girls. We do listening sessions with professionals in that community. We'll do listening sessions with parents in that community. Then we're also pulling data, if they've kept any data on girls. We bring together community leaders as well. So convening is a key part of our work in communities to see what people's understanding is of what's happening for girls in their community. The next stage is then to share all of this information about what we've learned. So it's the raising awareness around what we've learned, based on all the information we've gathered. And then in conversation and in partnership with everybody around the table, we start assessing the needs based on all of the information we've gathered. We also look at the policies and practices that are already in existence. Are they supportive? Do they align with the data we've collected? Are they aligned with what the numbers are showing, what the girls are sharing, what the leadership is sharing? Does all of that match up? We even have tools to go into organizations and do organizational assessments as well. So within detention centers, within programs. And then we'll start to prioritize the needs. And girls are a key part of that conversation. They get they have the right to have a seat at the table to help prioritize what are the needs based on everything we've created. And there we develop a strategic plan and then the implementation of that plan and measure it. And relational cultural theory is, in how we built out this model, is a core part of how we build it out. And it's a core part of the training that happens in the community. So the community is trained on the Girl-Centered Institute. And the Girl-Centered Institute training has one whole component that focuses specifically on relational cultural theory and what that looks like. And then as we continue to talk, we talk about what does this look like then and how you're building partnerships with each other. So as I said, our partnerships or our work, basically the core part of our work and what we do every day is our advocacy at the individual level, at the community level, at the state level, at the national level. We are cutting edge direct service projects. Our model programs are constantly changing. We do not envision ever being a big model, programming organization. We're small, and our model programs are there to teach us and educate and raise awareness for us so that we can continue to learn what's happening We are evidence-based, and our research allows us to continue to be evidence-based, and we're girl-specific, and all of our assessment tools, our direct service, everything is girl-specific. We provide expert congressional testimony. We are expert witnesses in federal court cases. We specifically work on court cases where women are facing life in prison or extended periods in prison, and they're victims of human trafficking, but are also facing trafficking charges because the trafficker has utilized them to, and they end up looking like the main trafficker. So we recently had a case where a woman was charged with trafficking minors because the trafficker used her cell phone, used her car to transport the minors. She was driving the vehicle. Hotel rooms were booked under her name, but there was a trafficker present, and she was facing 30 to life in prison. And we were able to get her with time served and treatment services, and now she's getting ready to buy her first house. I'm so excited. And staff training, development, workshops, conferences. We do networking with colleges, universities, and law schools, and that's where Natalie is like the training part of it. Working with colleges, her students are many of them are our interns, which is an amazing, amazing partnership. Our research, as I said, is on our website. Please take a look at it. We have an amazing, amazing research team. Evaluation of services in the community, and then our model programs. And these are all our social media links, so I invite you to check them out. And I'm going to stop sharing. Anybody that has questions or comments?
So Vicky, if you don't mind, what we'll do, let's have Natalie come in and offer her kind of reflections. And then what we usually do is open it up for the questions afterwards. But I've written down about 10, just so you know. But what I want to just say before we turn it over to Natalie is, I've been down to the Policy Center a number of times, but seeing this, kind of outlined like this is just extraordinary. I mean, to see what the breadth of what you all are taking on is just stunning. So I'm sure people are gonna have lots of questions, but let's hear Natalie's reflections, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Sure, I'll try to keep it brief so that we could, continue the conversation. So thank you, Vicky. I've been lucky to be involved with the Policy Center since about 2014. And it's like the classic 5 good things about, when you have that connection, you want more of it. So any opportunity to be involved, I'm like, I just show up and I want to be involved. And then I get that zest of wanting more. So I was involved as a clinician, a mental health counselor using RCT. I've been involved with the Jean Baker Miller Training Institute since I think about 2004 or 5, and have just tried to remain engaged in any way that I can in this work, and expanded it and shouting it from the rooftops in any way that I can. So thank you, Vicky, for sharing the power of connection within the Policy Center. It's amazing to see it, but I think it's even more amazing to have that felt sense when you meet the girls, when you meet the staff, when you get engaged in the communities and the lives and institutions they've touched in our community. It's had a profound impact. So the Policy Center has certainly transformed our community and continues to transform us as individuals and institutions, because they truly see the girl. They see the girl as the expert. They see the stories. They see the identities. They see the connection and disconnections. And I think in a lot of ways, most importantly, they see the strengths. The Policy Center has challenged us to do the hard and transformational work that comes with being in connection with other people. Not always easy. and reflecting on our practices and policies. They do this using the core tenets of RCT, the belief that we are created for connection and community, the belief that we find belonging in growth and connection and growth fostering connections and relationships, the belief that RCT isn't about sexy interventions, but rather the hard and unpredictable work of staying in the weeds and in the mud. I think I heard that for the first time from Maureen years ago. What I see the Policy Center do so well as an educator and as a clinician is hold systems accountable for creating the disconnections. So the girls aren't pathologized and blamed for the disconnection. It's really holding accountable the systems that generate and maintain the disconnections that the girls face, you know, in their communities and in their homes and in schools. Through RCT, they inform and educate the systems around us about what girls need. And I think they've done this, in my opinion, most beautifully with the state attorney's office. I've had the privilege of seeing that that relationship unfold and the huge difference that they've made in educating and informing everybody in the state attorney's office. And that now we have a girls' court in our county, which is, if you knew Duval County and you knew Florida, we operate very slowly and are slow to create change. And so that has been just monumental in our community. They know about what girls need because simply they ask and they share the power with them. They share the power with the girls to do the informing and educating and advocacy. Through this advocacy, our community is transformed, and in that change and transformation, growth, mutuality, and healing occur, which benefits us all, not just the girls, it benefits us all. The Policy Center has created a space where girls, staff, students, and community partners allow themselves to be known, which is often scary and vulnerable. And how do they do this? Because they've created a community of belonging. As Vicky was saying so eloquently in her presentation, they start from the inside out and they really model that for us. So we know how to do it and it doesn't seem so scary. As we all know, that doesn't come without conflict and disconnection. Relational ruptures happen. They happen frequently. Nobody's perfect, but it's a place where people aren't alone in their stuckness. And again, I think as somebody who gets to see the work from the outside in, and also sometimes when I'm lucky enough from the inside out, people don't flounder alone. It's the idea that we're all in this together. So that's what resonated for me when I learned about RCT as a graduate student 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. And it's still what resonates with me today. It's the theoretical and evidence-based practice, practice-based evidence and proof that we're meant to see each other and do the hard work of showing up in relationships, ebbing and flowing and growing through and because of relationships. The Policy Center uses RCT as a framework to place growth fostering relationships and the lived experiences of girls at the center. And they place them at the center of decision-making and advocacy and offer girls many points of access along the way. So I think that's often what's different in the work that I do in joining as an educator of counselors. When I work with the counselors in training at different agencies within the community, is that oftentimes agencies allow for entry at one point, and if the client or family don't engage, then they're out. And they don't really get a chance to re-engage. So the Policy Center has multiple points of access along the way for girls and families to enter and to show up as who they are, where they are authentically. Oftentimes it's not where it's convenient for us as clinicians or as administrators for them to show up, but it's just where they are and meeting them where they are. So all in all, it's a comprehensive girl-centered practice model that continues to disrupt the status quo and improve communities. So that's, I think, the takeaway message. If you all are to share this work that the Policy Center is doing, my hope is that you continue to share that they are a comprehensive girl-centered practice model that's embedded in RCT. So thank you, Vicky, for all the work that you're doing, and thank you all for allowing me to to reflect on the work that they're doing today with you guys.
Unmute. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you. And I mean, this was really incredible. So first off, just, you know, but so in terms of questions, the folks want to, it's a small enough group today. If you want to ask your question directly, raise a hand. I'll start out as you're thinking about what you want to, I'll pick some off my list here. And this is just the first one I thought of is I'm curious as you were kind of describing, you know, the role that girls have, and you had mentioned that they literally help you, they have a say in leadership. And I'm wondering how that happens. What does that look like? You know, because I think there are a lot of places that, you know, aspire to really have that kind of, you know, kind of non-status, non-hierarchical, you know, engagement and interaction. And but I'm wondering, how does that go, and how do you do it, and how does it? I mean, clearly it's effective, but how do you do it?
So, I mean, I think a great example is recently we're working on our values. So we're really looking at, do our values that we created 5 years ago still align with where we are? And one of our values that we've had for so many years is like, we don't believe in locked residential facilities are therapeutic or helpful. And so we had listening sessions with girls, and we sat with girls, and you know, one of the girls was like, well, that can be really offensive, because I was in a facility and I felt like it was helpful to me. I feel like I came out of there, you know, in a better place.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, we had to really pause and think about the lens from which we were presenting that, and how we were stating it, and how girls were hearing it. That somehow, in the way we had written it, it made girls feel less than in having gone through that experience. And so we sat in that space and we were like, yeah, like that's real. And we didn't even think of that. So let's talk about it. You know, let's talk about what we were thinking in saying it, and let's talk about what you experienced and what was your reality. And it allowed us to get a better understanding, and for us to express like what our lens is about, like not being it can be helpful, but it's not a therapeutic environment. And that we could do the same thing in our community without sending girls away from their families. And so really, are we saying just that girls shouldn't be sent away from their families as a form of punishment? Is that what we're saying? And so I think that to me is an example of how, as a leader, you know, it's the sitting with girls and being present. It's like when I'm in the office and girls are present, they know they can walk into my office. You know, it's just the part of our culture where, you know, I'm accessible. Or if I know a girl is there, I walk out and I'll meet with her, and I know the names of I try to learn the names of all the girls we work with, and I try to learn all of their stories and their narratives, and meet with their parents, so that it doesn't feel like leadership is separate from those that are providing the direct services. So I think for me, it's like, how do we build that culture where it doesn't feel like there's this separation? And, you know, I'll go out with team members when they're meeting with girls or on crisis calls. It doesn't matter what time the crisis call is. If there's not another team member, every team member knows they can call me, and I'm happy to go out to the integrity unit. Or, I mean, the staff laugh that, Vicky even goes to the trap houses with them.
Right.
I'll go to a trap house with you. I mean, I've been known to wear my business suit and leave a business meeting in my heels and show up at a trap house, So it's how do you build the culture of an organization where if I'm expecting staff to do it, number one, I will do it.
Mhm.
And that I'm accessible to those that we're serving, that they don't hesitate walking into my office and taking a seat and telling me what's new in their lives.
That was just making me think of Joyce Fletcher's work on kind of all of relational practice that often gets disappeared, right? And the willingness to just do whatever it takes to kind of move the organization and this group of people forward. And I mean, it sounds like that's some of what you're saying is right. Like you just you just do what you got to do, right?
Yeah. And I think it's that how you show up, right? If you authentically and show up, and if you're like, to me, it's like every day I have to model how I expect staff to show up.
And I would also say you do what you have to do, and it's very intentional. So it's over the reasons why you show up and the reasons why you model, and it's kind of going back to our CT. It's about continuing to build trust and connection.
Yep.
And not only with the girls, but with staff, that you're not stuck by yourself, that there's a balance, and that we all have something to contribute.
Yeah, good. Aparna, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, yes. First of all, hi, Amy. Wonderful to see you again.
Hi, good to see you.
Thanks, Amy. So thank you so much, Vicky and Natalie. I think this is amazing. And so I had a comment as well as a question. The comment is, I love the fact that you've used, a participatory approach almost, where the girls are not just seen as end users, but you're clearly seeing them as experts and active, co-creators and co-owners of the program, right? And I think that in turn then kind of creates this organic space for, this growth fostering connections, amongst the girls plus the girls with the staff. So it's, it's a beautiful system that kind of gets created. So my question now is, part of my dissertation is focused on creating what I'm calling e-huddles, which is online support groups for young girls raised in South Asian adolescent families, with the intent of working on, various things. So one of the things that I'm doing is holding focus group discussions with, adolescent girls, so that, they again are co-creators of this model, that we're kind of coming up with. And I was wondering, before I launch into this, was there any pushback that you got from the girls themselves? Did they really believe and trust your intent, that you actually want to listen to their voices, that their voices mattered? Because I think for so long, their voices have not mattered, so is there a level of, what the heck is this person doing? Is there an ulterior motive here? So I was wondering if you, came across that, or am I just overthinking this?
Oh, no, it is very true. It is very there. It is very real. And it takes a lot and a long time to build that trust. And I think it's, you have to keep showing up.
Right.
And everything you say you're going to do, you have to follow through on. It's like I tell the staff, like, if you say the next time you're going to show up, you're going to bring them a pencil, do not forget that pencil, because they are remembering. Like, to us, a pencil is not, like, I don't think of a pencil, right? I mean, right? But to them, they're remembering that pencil. And if you don't bring that pencil, their words might say, oh, doesn't matter. But that is the biggest failure for them. That's the one thing they need to be able to say, oh, here's another adult that let me down. Right? Because they've had so many adults fail them. And so to build the trust in the beginning, you have to follow through on everything. The other piece of it is do not be afraid to tell them the hard truth. So I always tell staff, like, it is better for us to give them the honest truth. If they're going to go into court and they're going to get arrested,
Right.
I rather our staff tell them ahead of time and provide that informed consent
Mhm.
than them show up and feel betrayed,
Mm. Mhm.
because they are going to feel so betrayed by us.
Correct.
Right. And so sometimes we have to do the hardest stuff because we have to tell them, you know what, I'm sorry. I was in the meeting, the multidisciplinary team meeting. From what I understand, the state attorney and the judge are not happy that, you ran away again. And so this time, I don't think they're going to give us a pass. I'm really going to advocate, but let me be truthful with you. I don't think we're going to be able to get a pass. It might be an ankle monitor, but most likely they're going to hold you for 10 days in detention again. I want you to be ready for this because I don't want it to be a surprise.
Mhm.
This is my advocacy plan. This is what I want to share. Are you okay with me sharing this? Right. And so it's so much more important for us to have these hard conversations because that builds trust
Right.
than it is for us to try to be kind. Like
I
sometimes we
love
think,
that.
right?
Mhm.
Sometimes we think we need to be kind, but kindness doesn't build trust.
Right. No, I love that. Thank you so much. That was really helpful about just keeping it real, and so thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not making that up. It's real.
Okay, good, good. Thanks. And I'd love to stay in touch. I will reach out. So I hope that's okay.
Absolutely.
Love
And
to
would
do
love
that.
to learn more about your work and what you're doing and anything we can do to help and support it. Happy to do that.
Lovely. Thank you, Vicky and Natalie. Thank you.
Yeah. How about other folks? Other questions, comments? Judy? You got to turn your mic on. Turn your mic.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say wow and thank you so much. You are doing such important work. And I know, the thoughtfulness and the integrity that you bring to it is just amazing. And thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having RCT in on it too.
Well, thank you for creating such an incredible model that, I think it's a gift to us as an organization to all of our staff get trained in this. It's part of our orientation and all of our staff. And, we have amazing Natalie who does the training. We're preparing for our summer training for all of our new staff and interns in August. And Natalie will do the 2 to 3 hour component on RCT. And so thank you for creating a model that aligns with how we should be doing this work with young people, and a model that has, I think, lasted through time. I think that's the other piece, that it still aligns with how we need to be doing our work now and how we need to be building connection with people even today, especially our young people.
I think that it's such a relief to when girls and families learn about RCT, because not only do the staff learn about it, but the girls and then the families learn about it sort of by trickle down approach, right? So that the staff, the clinicians are talking about the ebb and flow of relationships, the Nikki Fidelity and Kate Dooley's model, and they think, oh my goodness, that's what's happened in our relationship. I just thought we were a really messed up family. And it's validating to them, just as I think it has been validating to us personally and professionally in all of our lives, to have something on paper that's valid, that's seen as legitimate, because somehow, theories and science seem more legitimate. I don't know if they are, but they do. And so it legitimizes our lived experience. And I think that's what the girls and the families also respond to.
Well, it's also it's a reminder of how pathologizing our culture is, and the separate self culture, and the hyper individual competitive, right? Because, it's win or lose, right? And you're either a winner or a loser, right? And, being, it's like you and I can imagine, because, partly because I had this experience when I found RCT, 30 years ago, is it was like, the Wizard of Oz, like, what? This, like, what the hell's that? Nobody told me about that. You know what I mean? But to sort of really appreciate that, that experience and being able to offer it is in and of itself profound, right? And one of the things I was wondering about too is Vicky, this and Natalie, but this next program that you're doing in affiliation with Georgetown, I mean, helping people kind of understand what that is, because it's really a way also to disseminate this model throughout, right? So you're not just keeping it in Jacksonville, and if you'd share a little of that with folks.
Absolutely. So we are building a partnership with Georgetown University, their Juvenile Justice Institute, which is known to build curriculums that are then basically communities can get certified. And they go through a 5-day training and then do a capstone, a year-long capstone after their 5 days of training. And so the vision is that nationally, you basically write out a curriculum and then you put together how does a community come together and apply to gain access to this institute. And so based on the institute, certain community people come together. So like for ours, we're looking at judges, probation officers, key community leaders that are decision makers for whether girls would go deeper into the justice system. And it would be a cohort of 7 to 9 people from that community that would then come to Georgetown. And they go through a 5-day training. At the end of those 5 days, they decide on a capstone project. Then we provide training, they go, complete that training, decide on a capstone project. We approve the capstone project, and then they go through a year-long training and technical assistance project with us, focusing on that capstone, trying to make a focused change in their community based off of something they learned in the training. And so it's a great opportunity to take our Girl-Centered Institute model to a national level and to embed it in other communities. So we're really excited about that. And I think the piece that also excites me is also shifting how we as professionals have been doing our work. I think there's, in a lot of nonprofits, there's this concept of like, as professionals working with families, we're isolated on an island. So like, I'm your therapist, right? And I work isolated. I might have a supervisor, but I'm your therapist. And very few models have this concept of like, we're a team and we're going to work with this one family, and everybody on this team is there to support this family. And I think within the Policy Center, the model we've created is every family has a care manager, has a survivor mentor, and has a clinician that's working with them, and sometimes has 2 clinicians. So if we see that the mom needs therapeutic services and the daughter needs therapeutic services because there's intergenerational trauma that exists or intergenerational components that exist, we may put 2 clinicians working with the family. And this is a team that is working together to support the family. So no one professional feels like they're on an island themselves, having to meet all the needs of an individual or a family, right? Because I mean, how many organizations have continuous burnout?
Yeah, totally.
All the time, right? And you see people moving from agency to agency to agency to agency. I mean, I'm really proud to be able to say, and knock on wood, most of our staff have been with us like 10 years, since the inception of the organization, and we have a low rate of turnover. But I think a big part of that is because nobody's ever on an island by themselves. Nobody ever feels like I'm solely responsible for any one person. There's always a team approach, and there's always this feeling of like, we're a community responding to the needs of a family within the organization, and nobody. And so that is part of this girl-centered practice concept is no one person should be responsible for the trauma inflicted on this individual or the family.
Well, and that makes it right? Profoundly relational and profoundly
Profound.
different than so many organizations, right? I mean, that's what
Right.
I'm saying. Yeah. So we are over time. This was fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. I can't thank you both enough.